The reverse beeping of a moving truck shattered my Saturday morning silence. Through the rain-streaked glass of my living room, I watched it back into my driveway, crushing a Japanese maple I had planted 3 years ago. I opened the door to an invasion. My parents stood there, flanking my brother Tyler. Mom didn't say hello. She simply pointed to the detached studio unit across the lawn. "Tyler lost the townhouse," she announced, her voice flat and commanding. "Bad markets. As the family safety net, you are moving into the studio. Today." Before I tell you exactly what I did next, drop a comment. Where are you listening from right now? And what time is it there? I want to see who is awake for this story. My heart rate didn't even spike. In my line of work, you don't react to contamination, you contain it. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped a single icon on my home screen. Perimeter seal. The heavy magnetic locks on the front door slammed into place with a mechanical thud that vibrated through the floorboards. The sudden silence was absolute. Outside, I saw Tyler reach for the handle, expecting it to turn, but it was dead weight. He rattled it, looked confused, and then slammed his palm against the wood. I walked to the wall panel and held the talk button. My voice wasn't shaky. It was the voice I used for data reviews, flat, factual, and final. "You are trespassing. Remove the truck and your vehicles from my driveway immediately." My father, Richard, stepped up to the glass. He didn't look like a dad visiting his daughter. He leaned in, his breath fogging the glass. "Open this door, Natalie," he barked, his voice tinny through the speaker. "Stop playing games. This house is a family trust asset. We all know how this works. You hold the title, but the family uses the asset. That was always the deal, a family trust asset. The lie was so bold it almost impressed me, but I wasn't surprised. See, people look at my life, the glass house, the biotech career, the $225,000 salary, and they think I'm just ambitious. They think I saved $94,000 for a down payment because I love real estate or wanted a view of the lake. They don't understand the invisible chain of the survivor. When you grow up as the designated safety net for a golden child, you don't save money for vacations. You save money for war. I knew, deep down, that eventually, Tyler would burn his life to the ground again. And I knew that when he did, my parents would come to harvest my stability to patch his holes. My financial independence wasn't ambition. It was a fortress. I had built these walls not to keep the rain out, but to keep them out. I had been waiting for this specific Saturday for 10 years. I didn't respond to my father's shouting. I didn't try to argue logic with people who believed they owned me. I tapped the next contact on my favorites list. Gregory. He answered on the first ring. "Natalie, it's happening," I said. 2 words. We had prepped for this. They are on the porch. Tyler, Richard, Stacy. They have a moving truck. They are claiming the property belongs to a trust. "I'm 12 minutes out," Gregory said, his tone shifting from casual to lethal. "Do not open the door. Do not engage. I'm bringing the hard copy of the deed." I hung up and watched them through the rain-slicked glass. They were pounding on the door now, faces twisted in the ugly shape of denied entitlement. They thought I was trapping myself inside. They didn't realize I was just waiting for the executioner. I stood 12 feet back from the glass, watching the rain soak into my mother's cashmere coat. They were huddling under the overhang of my porch now, arguing among themselves, pointing at the smart lock as if it were a personal insult rather than a security device. To a stranger, they looked like a family in distress. To me, they looked like auditors coming to collect a debt I didn't owe. While I waited for Gregory, I opened my banking app. Not to check my balance, but to remind myself of the reality they refused to acknowledge. I didn't buy this house with luck. I bought it with 80-hour weeks in a biohazard suit, running PCR tests until my eyes burned. I saved $94,000 for the down payment over 6 years. I drove a 10-year-old sedan and ate meal-prepped rice and beans while my peers went to Europe. Tyler? Tyler drove a leased luxury SUV. He called himself a tech entrepreneur. In reality, he was a gambler with a LinkedIn profile. He didn't lose his townhouse because of bad markets. He lost it because he leveraged his equity to cover 3 failed crypto schemes and a sports betting addiction he hid inside a trading app. But my parents didn't see a gambler and a saver. They saw the trap of normalized cruelty. See, Richard and Stacy aren't evil in the way a cartoon villain is evil. They don't twist their mustaches and plot to steal. It is much more dangerous than that. They view our family as a single communist organism. In their minds, resources do not belong to the individual who earned them. They belong to the collective to be deployed where the need is greatest. And Tyler? Tyler is a bottomless pit of need. Because I am stable, I am viewed as a surplus. Because Tyler is chaotic, he is viewed as a deficit. In their warped internal logic, transferring my house to him isn't theft. It is balancing the books. They genuinely believe that my success is a resource they created, and therefore, they have the right to harvest it to feed the child who is starving, even if he is starving because he threw his dinner in the trash. They had normalized this cruelty for so long that they couldn't even see it as aggression. They thought they were being good parents by fixing Tyler using my parts. I watched my father kick a decorative planter over. The terracotta shattered across the wet concrete. He wasn't angry because he was worried about Tyler's housing. He was angry because the appliance he owned me wasn't working. I was a toaster refusing to toast. I checked the time. Gregory was 4 minutes out. I took a sip of my coffee. It was still hot. My hands were steady. They thought they were dealing with a daughter who craved their approval. They didn't realize they were dealing with a landlord who had just found a squatter. They didn't leave. They didn't get back in their cars to wait out the rain or drive to a diner to regroup like rational people. Instead, they declared a siege. I watched from my kitchen island as the dynamic shifted from a family dispute to a hostile occupation. Tyler was the first to break. The rain was coming down harder now, a cold Seattle drizzle that soaks through everything, and his patience dissolved with his hair gel. He walked up to the floor-to-ceiling glass wall of my living room, triple-paned, energy-efficient, and expensive, and started banging on it with the flat of his hand. "You are hoarding wealth while your family suffers," he screamed. The sound was muffled by the heavy glass, but the hatred was perfectly clear. "Jennifer is pregnant. You selfish witch. You have 3 empty rooms. Do you hear me? 3. He wasn't asking for help. He was demanding restitution for a crime I hadn't committed. In his mind, my empty guest rooms were stolen goods that rightfully belonged to his unborn child. My phone started buzzing against the court's countertop. It wasn't a call, it was a bombardment. My mother, Stacy, had switched tactics from verbal commands to digital warfare. We agreed as a family, Natalie. "How can you be so cold? Your brother is desperate. You are killing him. You are literally killing him with this stress. Open the door, or we are not leaving." I didn't reply. I didn't block them. Either. I needed the record. I took screenshots of every text, every timestamp, every threat. I was building a timeline. Then, the strategy changed again. I saw my father gesture toward the U-Haul. Tyler nodded, wiping rain from his eyes. They walked to the back of the truck and rolled up the door. They started unloading. They weren't moving into the house yet. They were building a barricade. They began stacking heavy cardboard boxes directly behind my sedan in the driveway. 1 row, then 2, then 3. They were blocking me in. It was a physical power play, a way to say, if we can't get in, you can't get out. It was the tactic of a bully who realizes he's losing control of the victim. I felt a spike of adrenaline, but I forced my breathing to stay even. This was good. This was escalation. They were moving from an annoying family visit to actionable harassment. Then came the snap. My father, frustrated by the weight of a box, or perhaps just the sheer indignity of standing in the rain outside a house he felt entitled to command, lost his temper. He grabbed one of my heavy wrought iron patio chairs. He didn't sit in it. He swung it. He hurled the chair at the sliding glass door. The sound was a sickening thwack crack. The chair bounced off, clattering onto the pavers. But the damage was done. A spiderweb fracture bloomed on the outer pane of the safety glass, right at eye level. My father stood there, chest heaving, staring at the crack. He didn't look sorry. He looked satisfied. He looked like he had finally made a mark on the fortress I had built to keep him out. I looked at the shattered glass, then at him. He had just crossed the line from trespassing to property destruction. I picked up my phone again, not to text, but to open the camera app. I took a photo of the crack, framing him in the background. The siege was over. A sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway, maneuvering carefully around the barricade of boxes my family had built. Gregory stepped out. He wasn't wearing a power suit or carrying a flashy briefcase. He wore a dark raincoat, waterproof boots, and carried a simple leather folder. He looked less like a lawyer and more like a grim reaper with a law degree. I watched through the intercom camera as my father marched toward him, chest puffed out, ready to intimidate. "Who are you?" Richard demanded, stepping into Gregory's path. "This is a private family matter. Get off my property." Gregory didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He simply walked around my father as if he were a traffic cone. He approached the glass door where I stood, nodded once to acknowledge me, and then turned to face the group huddled on my patio. "My name is Gregory Vance," he said, his voice cutting through the sound of the rain. "I represent Natalie in all legal matters regarding this property." "We don't need lawyers," my mother shrilled, wringing her hands. "We're her parents. We're just trying to help her brother." Gregory opened his folder. He pulled out a single document, laminated against the rain. "This is a formal notice of trespass. You have been asked to leave by the legal owner. Your continued presence here is a criminal offense." "I'm an owner," Tyler shouted, stepping forward. "It's a family trust. Tell him, Dad." Gregory looked at Tyler, then at Richard. He pulled out a second document, a certified copy of the deed. "There is no trust," Gregory said, his tone bored. "The property at 4402 Lakeview Drive is owned solely by Natalie Marie Vance. There are no co-signers, no liens, no trusts. You have exactly 10 minutes to remove your vehicle and your belongings from the premises before I contact the King County Sheriff's Department to effect an eviction." My father laughed. It was a nervous, incredulous sound. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't call the cops on family." "Natalie wouldn't let you." He looked at me through the glass, his eyes pleading for me to step in, to soften the blow, to be the daughter he trained me to be. "Natalie, tell him to stop this nonsense." I pressed the talk button one more time. "Gregory works for me," I said, "and he doesn't bluff." My mother gasped. "Natalie, how can you be so cruel? We're your parents. Tyler is your brother, and this is my house," I replied. 10 minutes. Gregory checked his watch. 9 minutes and 40 seconds. They didn't move. They couldn't believe it. They were paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of the situation. In their world, I always folded. I always gave in. The idea that I would actually enforce a boundary was as foreign to them as speaking Mandarin. They spent the next 9 minutes arguing, pleading, and threatening. My father tried to charm Gregory. "Look, son, we're just having a disagreement." My mother tried to shame him. "Do you have no heart?" Tyler just paced, muttering about how I was going to pay for this. At the 10-minute mark, Gregory didn't say a word. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Dispatch? This is Gregory Vance. I'm at 4402 Lakeview Drive. I have a trespassing situation in progress." "Yes, the homeowner is present and fears for her safety. Yes, there has been property damage." He hung up and looked at my family. "Sheriff is en route." My father's face went from red to white. He looked at the boxes, at the truck, at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of the police, but fear of losing control. He realized, finally, that the rules had changed. But Tyler? Tyler didn't look afraid. He looked smug. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He smoothed it out, protecting it from the rain, and held it up like a weapon. "Go ahead and call the cops," he sneered. "I've got something to show them, too." A King County Sheriff's patrol car rolled silently into the driveway, lights flashing blue against the gray afternoon. The deputy stepped out, his hand resting casually near his belt. He walked past the moving truck, past the barricade of boxes, and stopped in front of the group on the patio. "We got a call about a trespassing situation," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Who's the homeowner?" "I am," Tyler shouted before I could speak. He stepped forward, waving the paper he had pulled from his pocket. "I am the legal tenant of this property. This woman is refusing to vacate the premises per our agreement." The deputy looked at Tyler, then at the paper. "Let me see that." Tyler handed it over with a flourish. "It's a standard lease agreement, signed by the owners, Richard and Stacy Vance. I've been renting from them for 2 months. I have rights." I watched from inside, my heart hammering a new, dangerous rhythm against my ribs. A lease. A signed lease. The deputy scanned the document. Then he looked at my parents. "You two are the owners?" "Yes," my father lied, his voice regaining its bluster. "We own the property. Natalie is our daughter. We allowed her to stay here temporarily, but now her brother needs the space. We signed a lease with him. It was a brilliant, desperate move. By claiming it was a landlord-tenant dispute, they were trying to tie the officers' hands. Police generally don't intervene in civil matters. They would tell us to take it to court, which would buy Tyler weeks, maybe months, of squatters' rights." The deputy looked at Gregory. "Do you have a response to this?" Gregory didn't even blink. He turned to me and gave a small nod. I unlocked the iPad I had been holding. "Officer," I said through the intercom. My voice amplified and clear. "That lease is fraudulent. My parents do not own this house. They never have." I walked to the glass door and held the iPad up to the pane. On the screen was the live county assessor's database page for my address. Owner, Natalie Marie Vance. Purchase date, June 12th, 2014. Last transaction, refinance, 2019. Sole borrower. "I also have my digital title insurance policy right here," I said, swiping to the next document. "And the original deed is in my attorney's hand." The deputy looked at the screen, then at the paper in his hand. He looked at the signatures on the bottom of the lease, Richard Vance. Stacy Vance listed as landlords. He looked at Tyler. "Sir, did you know your parents didn't own this house when you signed this?" "Of course they own it," Tyler stammered, his confidence cracking. "It's a family asset," they told me. "It is not a family asset," Gregory interrupted, his voice cutting like a scalpel. "It is solely owned property. And by presenting this forged document to a law enforcement officer to claim tenancy rights, you have just committed felony fraud and forgery. Additionally, your parents, by signing as landlords on a property they do not own, are accomplices to that fraud." The silence on the patio was deafening. The rain seemed to stop. The deputy's demeanor shifted instantly. He wasn't a mediator anymore. He was an officer investigating a crime. He handed the paper back to Gregory as evidence. "Sir," he said to Tyler, "turn around and place your hands behind your back." "What?" Tyler squeaked. "No, wait. It's a misunderstanding. Mom, Dad." My parents lunged forward. "Officer, please," my mother screamed. "He didn't know. We thought we just wanted to help him." "Don't arrest him." "Step back, ma'am," the deputy ordered, unhooking his handcuffs. The metallic click, click as they locked around Tyler's wrists was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Tyler looked at me through the glass. He wasn't smug anymore. He looked like a child who had just realized the fire he started was going to burn him alive. "Natalie!" he screamed, desperation distorting his face. Tell them it's okay. Don't let them take me." My mother threw herself against the glass door, her palms sliding down the wet surface. She was weeping, her face a mask of tragedy. "Natalie, please! He's your brother! He made a mistake! Just tell the officer you gave him permission, please." I looked at them. I looked at the parents who had demanded I sacrifice my home for the son who had gambled his away. I looked at the brother who had tried to steal my sanctuary with a piece of paper and a lie. I pressed the talk button one last time. "He didn't make a mistake," I said, my voice trembling not with fear, but with the final release of a burden I had carried for 32 years. He committed a crime. And you helped him. I looked my mother in the eye. You made him a criminal. I'm just making him accountable. I turned to the officer. I am pressing full charges for trespassing, property destruction, and fraud. As they led Tyler away to the patrol car, head bowed against the rain, I didn't feel triumph. I felt lighter. The fortress had held. The siege was broken. The rain eventually turned to snow, and then to the pale, hesitant sun of a Seattle spring. The seasons changed outside my glass walls, but inside, the air was finally still. Tyler was convicted of felony forgery and fraud. The judicial system didn't care about family trusts or misunderstandings. It cared about evidence, and Gregory had provided a mountain of it. Tyler's entrepreneurial spirit had finally earned him a permanent record that no amount of charm could erase. My parents? They didn't lose their home because of me. They lost it because they liquidated their 401ks to hire a high-priced criminal defense team that couldn't argue with a time-stamped IP address. They downsized to a one-bedroom apartment in Renton. The last I heard, my father was working part-time at a hardware store, still telling anyone who would listen that his ungrateful daughter had stolen his legacy. Let him talk. I have the deed. My house is now valued at $820,000. But the most important number isn't the equity. It's the check that arrived in the mail last Tuesday, $28,500 in court-ordered restitution for legal fees and property damage. I stared at the check. It was blood money in a way extracted from the wreckage of the people who raised me. I could have used it to upgrade the patio or take a trip to Bali, but that felt like regular revenge. I wanted something more permanent. I deposited the check into a new account titled the Fortress Fund. It is a scholarship specifically designed for women entering STEM fields who are escaping financial abuse or coercive family control. It pays for deposit, first month, and last month's rent on a new apartment. It buys them the locks I had to buy for myself. This is the justice of the sower. True revenge isn't just watching your enemies fall. It is taking the bricks they threw at you and building a shelter for someone else. It is realizing that my selfishness wasn't a flaw. It was the seed of my survival. By refusing to be harvested, I became a garden for others. I slept soundly last night. The rain returned, drumming against the roof, but it didn't sound like a siege anymore. It sounded like applause. If you've ever had to choose your peace over your family, share this story. You are not alone.